Hello and welcome, one and all. This is MicktheOtr. I hope everyone here is doing well today. And if you say you're not, so help me gods, you may have an army, but I have an otter. In contrast to the Arsenal of the Gods series that I'm doing, I wanted to try something new today, and something I know that we would all enjoy. It's a little series I'm doing now. I call it Apex Archives. And in this series, we will take longer form, deep dives into the monsters and creatures from across all mythologies, religions, and cultures. Comparatively, it will be less explosive and memey as AOTG, while retaining the same level of information, if not more. The first episode will be on the Kraken, a legendary monster known for creating havoc in the sea's depths and those that ride its waves. Without further ado, let's get crack-a-lackin'. Now, contrary to popular belief, the Kraken actually originated in Norse mythology, not Greek. Greek mythology definitely took the inspiration and ran with it, but the monster most confused with the Kraken from their myths is a being called Scylla. A few more monsters similar to the Kraken include the Jewish mythology's Leviathan, the Lovecraftian Cthulhu, Greece's Hydra and Charybdis, and finally Norse mythology's other titanous monster, Jormungandr. Back to the topic at hand. The ancient Norse people believed in a sea monster so huge that it could drag entire ships down to the depths of the ocean with ease. This creature was said to live off of the coast of Norway and Greenland, and sailors were warned to avoid these waters at all costs. The earliest known written account of the Kraken dates all the way back to the 13th century, in a book called the Konungs Skugja, which was written for the young king of Norway at the time, which was King Magnus Lagabøte, who ruled Norway from 1263 to 1280. Now, over time, the Kraken became a staple of Norse folklore, and has since captured the imagination of people all around the world, even spreading to other cultures. Yeah, you Greece! As the legend of this insurmountable creature grew, so did its power. As time passed, the Kraken was equally awe and fear-inspiring. Whether its abilities are the result of origin of said awe and fear, that is unknown. But let's start with the most obvious. Its size and strength. In the original Norse myths, the Kraken is described as a massive sea monster, capable of ripping entire ships asunder, and dragging the crewmates to the depths of hell. One of a few examples here is in chapter 60 of the Saga of Orvar Odd, an Icelandic saga from the 13th century that tells the story of a legendary archer named Orvar Odd, who embarks on a journey by sea. In the saga, the ship is attacked by two massive sea monsters that are described as having huge tentacles and the ability to drag the ships and sailors to the depths of the ocean. I will put the original text on screen for those interested. I love this language dearly, and can even read part of it, but I definitely needed to translate a good chunk into English to fully understand it. But so we are all on the same page, the English translation goes as such. Now they sailed with good winds and weather, and when they had sailed for a long time, they saw two sinking things before them, and they had long told themselves that he who was himself descended from them, who had so ruthlessly laid waste to the country. They now sailed towards him, and would help themselves among other things, because they thought he had too much support. And when they came to him, they wanted to cut him apart, and they both drew under the ship. Now, bear with me here, because I know even the English can be confusing at points, but the Eli 5 here is Orvar Odd, and his crew recognized the spooky, scary things as sea monsters, who are the kids of a larger, different sea monster that destroyed their homeland, and the kids' sea monsters wanted to eat them. Do mind, these are never specifically referred to as Krakens, but it's safe to say their immense size and strength helped influence the Kraken legend as a whole, and those properties are now attested to be one with the Kraken itself. Now, the Kraken isn't just an impossibly large creature. In fact, that's not even what mostly makes it a scary opponent on the open water. The Kraken possesses the power to create whirlpools, tidal waves, and manipulate the surrounding water in general. Now, the idea of the Kraken causing whirlpools and tidal waves because of its large size is what's mostly found in the myths. But sometimes the Kraken does wield an implicated psychic control over the immediate ocean surrounding it. I thought that bit was interesting personally. I wonder why we don't see that more. But either way, we all know he's making waves!
Stop, okay? No more!
Now, while that's cool and well, canonical abilities go, that's it. There are a couple more abilities that come from more modern media and people's wild imaginations in general, such as being poisonous, and this comes from the Kraken book authored by China Miéville. Regeneration, this comes from the minor belief that Kraken blood is magical and has regenerative properties. That just kind of depends on the specific iteration and the imagination of the people behind that piece of media. And camouflage, which I'll just call him out on it. He ripped that shit straight from Octopus's, bro. Now, fun fact. H.P. Lovecraft has had a significant impact on the perceived image of the Kraken. The author himself said the Kraken was a huge influence on where he was able to conjure the cosmic horror Cthulhu from in the first place. And in a weird way, that's probably why some versions of the topic monster have psychic abilities, and why its presence can be so otherworldly at times. Lovecraftian fans' passions and visions of eldritch horror rubbing its influence into the legend itself. Then again, that could be my own headcanon. Anywho, let's talk about some of the more modern appearances of the Kraken in pop culture and media. The Kraken is featured in Pirates of the Caribbean, Dead Man's Chest, and at World's End very prominently, and even swallows Jack Captain Jack Sparrow, whole, and wreaks absolute havoc on ships while under Davy Jones's command. Only to die unceremoniously, off-screen, and be found beached on an island. Honestly, that's better than both Clash of the Titans iterations, where the big bad Kraken is graciously granted 2 minutes of screen time, and turned into an XL bust because some decollated snake bitch's head gives him the stank eye. Memes aside, I might have went too far. She ain't deserved that. Medusa did nothing wrong, Athena just did her the dirtiest. Yet still, as horrendous as those missed opportunities were for the legendary Kraken in both movies, I'd take that over getting dogged by the ghost of Sparta himself. Twice. But Mick, the second Kraken was just electro-polymorphed into... I don't believe I asked. Fuck technicalities, it's still a Kraken, and I'm so technicality over the Kraken being used as a speed bump on the road that is the story. More often than not, a story with the Kraken in it becomes a reasonably accomplishable feat of strength for the slayer of it, generally the protagonist. Just for the aforementioned protagonist to mount it up on the wall above their Mossberg 500 and go, good golly whiz, time for a cold one. There are a few good books that involve the Kraken in some form or fashion, aside from the original myths and sources. Kraken by China Miéville, like I've mentioned earlier, is a decent read, and not at all what you are assuming it's about. Yeah, its Kraken theme is very strong, but if you read this one, you might want to hold on to your butt, and have had passed every AR test in school because it's got some big words. The Kraken Wakes is an oldie but a goldie, published in 1953 by John Wyndham. The Kraken Wakes is analogous to the daddy from Powerpuff Girls, mixing the potions to create the titular characters, except he poured way too much Star Wars into my drink, and now it tastes like extra large metal alien squid. You get two protagonists and pretty solid themes involving human ignorance and arrogance, climate change, and the ever-present looming threat of a potential alien invasion. Fun stuff. I can't mention books without 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. which, believe it or not, is even older than the previous, having been originally released in 1870 by Jules Verne. While the Kraken isn't the most prominent in this story, that detail doesn't keep it from being a very solid story altogether, and the book showcases discovery through exploration, and how the deep sea can be both a wonderful and terrifying place simultaneously. As a plus, the movie was pretty damn good for its time. Now that we've gone over this magnificent creature's notable pop culture appearances, as well as some novels, and we acknowledge the Kraken as a creation of Norse myth, what exactly inspired the Kraken in the first place? It, like many a fantastical monster, is like a very pretty triple-tiered cake, with the collective imagination of people at the time as the tray that holds said cake. Each layer to this cake is another source of inspiration for the monster to be built from. In this case, one of those layers are definitely founded from the giant squid. As the biggest among their species, they get a growth spurt of up to 60 feet, and are definitely known to be way too big for their britches at times, and attack anything from boats to whales. Another level to this red velvet cake, sue me, is the octopus. Kraken are typically depicted with many tentacles, a sense of higher intelligence, and this also explains the Kraken's rather obscure ability to camouflage itself, because, fun fact, octopuses can in fact camouflage themselves almost flawlessly with their environment. So much so you'd think they'd be saving you 15% or more on your car insurance. The third tier to this beautimous cake is from an often overlooked saga from Norse culture, one that you might remember, as a matter of fact. The Saga of Ordvar Odd. We touched on this saga earlier as a reference to the Kraken's attested strength and size, and believe me when I say, in chapter 57, literally 3 chapters before the duo of sea monster kitties from earlier, something called a Hafgufa makes itself known. I will put the original text on screen like I did earlier for those interested, but I'll read the English so we all follow along, okay? Ready? They now sailed away, and headed towards the open sea, and there they saw an enormous Hafgufa, so big that it had 7 ships' lengths in length, and was as broad as the ships. It had often been seen in the sea that is now called the British Sea, but when the crew saw it, they all ran on board the ships and sailed away from it. Look, I can tell you right now that this is part of why the Kraken is so damn big. Enough so that it can swallow ships whole without breaking a sweat or hardly noticing. Obviously this is in conjunction with the other 2 monster kitties from earlier, but that's my whole point. This saga alone has backpacked the legend of the Kraken harder than my brother carries my lard ass through a game of Smite Conquest. God's I'm awful at Conquest. But my brother's really good at it. Kinda like how people from all over the world are so good at creating countless stories and fables about the Kraken to establish the modern grandiose image we know as the Sea Bane, the Ocean Serpent, and the Terror of the Depths. This will bring our deep dive analysis for the Kraken to a close. I hope you learned something new today, and that I was able to provide you with some entertainment in the meantime. This was an interesting video to make, and definitely shed some light on the lesser known aspects of this creature. Please let me know what you thought in the comment section, and leave a like if you enjoyed. I appreciate your time on this day, and may the rest of it be well. Till next time, everybody. Peace.